What does it mean to be a man? And how is one supposed to express his manhood? Over the years, the idea and the concept of manhood has changed.
Through religious beliefs, social views, and general household rules, it seems that in this day and age, it's even more difficult for a man to discover and hold on to the true essence of real man.
Regardless of personal opinion, the desire to become a man is inherently embedded in the male psyche.
From the day a man is born till the day he dies, he possesses an internal clock, pushing him to discover what it really means to be a real man.
The mission and focus of this show is to pursue this idea while encouraging others along the way to honor and learn from the old man, teach and empower the young man, encourage and celebrate the good man, and love and embrace the bad man.
Real men having real discussions, reeling into you to give him proof of making a godly truth, but truth no bluffing. Cause Ian Thompson giving you many topics, hotter than the tropics, atomically dropping bombshells of knowledge. And Sanford is on the roll, yeah, he got the goal. Ain't no stopping, we inspired by the Most High Ghost. So we invoking the presence of God, and him do we hope? Tune in, get involved, and ride along with the show. Let's go! It's real talk.
Good evening to all our viewers, our Facebook viewers, YouTube viewers, all social media outlets that we are launching from. This is the Real Men Real Talk show in collaboration with the Elizabeth Estate Community Association. We're having a conversation this evening on crime and killing in our community. We have some esteemed guests with us tonight. A few of the clergymen and a few of those serving in the political arena. We celebrate all of them in their respective places tonight. We thank them for actually participating with us. But before I go any further in allowing them to introduce themselves to you, I would like to say a quick prayer, if it's all right. Father God, I thank you, God, for this opportunity, God, to be here tonight. Thank you, God, for your grace and your mercy, God. We're about to have a conversation, God, that I know that is dear to your heart. Father God, you think you're one that believes, God, that the greatest resource on earth is the human resource, us as people, us as men in particular. Father, allow us, God, to be enlightened by your spirit. Allow us, God, to speak as you directed us to speak. And God, and help us to bring about change in this country that you call home. In your precious name, in Yeshua Christ, we pray. Amen. Yes, so as I said before, this is a very candid conversation that we're hoping to have with some wonderful panelists here. But before we go in and allow them to introduce themselves, I'd like to give our sponsors a shout. As I said before, Elizabeth State Community, the Elizabeth State Association, the Game Changer Movement subsidiary, Game Changer Printing, Kicks Braiding, and Impact Fitness. Those are our sponsors tonight for the night show. Without further ado, let's go into our panelists tonight and allow them to introduce themselves very briefly. I'll start out with our Pastor Dwight Ferguson. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well. I am the senior pastor for the Church of God of Prophecy in Elizabeth Estates on Commonwealth Boulevard. I am married to the wonderful Pam. We've been married for 28 years. I have 2 children.
Wonderful.
Duriai is 24 and Duranique is 21. I love the Lord, I love people, and I love life.
Amen. Amen. That's good. And next up, we have the Honorable Ellsworth Johnson.
Hello.
How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm grateful to God for his unmerited favor. And why I say that first is because unfortunately, I came down with COVID. And so I've had mild symptoms, but if the mild symptoms are mild, I don't want to see the severe. So
yeah,
I'm going to say to you all just to be careful, exercise all the necessary precautions, and follow the directive of your doctors. I want to thank God for being here this evening on no strength of my own. I'm the MP for Yamacraw, hail from Dowds, Cat Island. I'm married to the wonderful Kathy Ann Cromati Johnson, and I have three beautiful children, and it's a delight to be here this evening.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, and I do appreciate your candidness and talking about your health right now. You in particular would have a deep appreciation for good health right now at this moment. We thank God for allowing helping you to pull through. Um, Moving on, we have here the president of the Elizabeth State Community Association himself, Mr. Kendrick Dames. Mr. Kendrick Dames, please let the viewing public know how you're doing tonight, sir.
I'm doing good. God is good. My name is Kendrick James. I'm the president of the Elizabeth State Community Association, which was in part designed or created, if I could use that term, to deal with the issues within that particular community. We have been doing so now for the past 5 years. We had a little sort of a delay because of COVID, but we're gonna keep pressing on. But I'm really, really happy for this forum tonight, for this discussion. Two great gentlemen, Mr. Johnson and Pastor Ferguson. So I am really looking forward to this panel discussion tonight.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Unfortunately, our next panelist we expected to have Bishop Josie is unable to get him with us at the moment. Hopefully, he can get him before we close. But going right along, gentlemen. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, our conversation is about crime and as we have added killing in the community. Before I get into that, I want to get into you guys again. I want to dig into some more if you would allow me to. I want the naked truth. So for some of you, if you can give me the front of the naked truth, or some of you can just give me a bathing suit or underwear, however you want to do it. Give me the naked truth. And I want to ask you, gentlemen, I want to go down the line. I want to ask you, gentlemen, what was your experience growing up in Nassau? If you didn't grow up in Nassau, however, the family island, however it was, what was your personal experience growing up? And as a disclaimer, the reason why I'm asking this question, I'm trying to get into you personally because I expressed to you guys before. I want the viewership to get the understanding that despite the many hats that we can wear, the titles that we have, the accomplishments, the accolades, we're still human. And some of us have not done everything right, the right way all the time. And as my pastor says, he said, no one is 100% of the time. So I want to give the viewership insight on who you are as men, some of your triumphs, some of your accomplishments, some of your trials, and just life. So I'll start out by Pastor as we start out initially in the first order. Pastor Dwight, talk to us. Let us know what it meant. What did it mean to you to be Bahamian growing up? How was it your experience growing up as a Bahamian young boy?
Academy. And then I went on to the Government High School. I grew up in Dan Arlington Estates, but my father had a business on East Street and Gibbs Corner. And so I had this dual element of life. So in the Dan Arlington Estate community I grew up in, there was swimming pools, tennis courts, go-karts, and the like. And then I also knew what it is to go and spend a lot of my time in summers at my dad's store. And so I also knew what it is to walk down to Mrs. Roll right there across from Strawn Corner, the chicken shack. I knew what it is to walk up the road to the Chinese food store. And so I think I had this dual element of lifestyles, and that I appreciated. I appreciated the fact that I was given exposure into both types of neighborhoods. That in a while. I don't know how much more deep you want to go into it.
Well, my next question, I guess, would be to you. Is what is your most fondest memory as a young man?
Uh,
What is your most fondest memory as a young man?
I think I have several, and I think I'd have to just kind of weave through to kind of figure out what would probably be the most highlighted one. I grew up in a neighborhood where where we where we had some wonderful experiences. Um, just hanging out under the Poinciana tree in the middle of the roundabout in Dan Arch Estates with the Hiltons, Thompsons, the Jops, and just experiencing just boyhood life. I was probably in my early teens at that time. Just just enjoying friendship and that type of just doing the things that we did. To me, that's found. It was a good time of fellowship. There was no challenge. There was no we. I didn't grow up with no sense of gang and fighting, and I've never experienced that. When I went to work at my dad's store, then it was a different type of a lifestyle, and I saw the first time I saw shootings and what have you. But that to me was found. I think as I weave through my memory bank right now, I could kind of focus and see that as a found memory that I hold dear.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Moving on. The Honorable Ellsworth Johnson.
Hi. Hi. The question is how did I grow up?
Yeah, the question is, what was it like for you growing up as a young Bahamian? Give me your experience, and at the end of it, I'll tag on another question to that.
Okay.
What was your most fondest memory?
Oh, thank you. Well, I was born in Nassau through Exuma Street to a single mother, uh, who's obviously had a child from a married man. My father, the late Oscar Johnson. At age 4, I was sent to Canada to live with my grandmother. And so I spent that time there where we did a lot of subsistence farming, went to school. A little rugged, but in the summers I would come to Nassau to be with my mother. When my grandmother passed, there I learned to farm, to wash, clean, and it was a very small, close-knit community. So you went to church, you sang in the choir, you did all those things. Then I came to Nassau when my grandmother passed, and that provided, I think, a little bit too much freedom. And that's where I really got to know my father. Wasn't doing too very well in school. Associations weren't that good. And I think it would bring me to one of my best experiences. I didn't understand it then. My father was a printer, and so he would insist that I come to see him. And at age, I think when I was the 10th grade, I had to leave school. That's when I met Harris Monford, because I was really challenged in school. And Gail Wisdom, who assisted me with all of my reading challenges. And when I left school, I had to go and work on the dock, and Daddy insisted that I had to work. He said, "You're a man." He would tell me about history and all these different things. And the thing about it, I think, and now that I'm a man, I understand it, and it's something that I live by today. He would always turn up wherever I was, because my mother worked in the hotel. So in the evening, she wouldn't be at home. So that's when I had an opportunity to be with my friends. But Daddy always turned up. If I was through Lily at Vivaldi Corner, Yellow Elder, or Ridgeland Park, where Daddy would turn up, collect me, and insisted that I come to see him and that I spend time with him. And after that, I was able to, get back online with schooling and all that stuff. So, I saw some things that I think a child shouldn't have seen, but I know now of the importance of a father in a child's life. And I'm very grateful. And I said that to him publicly, one time when I had the opportunity. His daddy had a number of children, about 25. And, to see Daddy one day pray and to see Daddy tell me about the Bible and about family and what I ought to be to my children was very powerful. And so, to my mind, with that experience, and then the other thing that he did was insisted. He had this concept where he wanted me to meet people who would speak to my spirit. And so in the evening, sometimes when I think I realized that he saw that I wasn't really hooking on to the printing because Daddy didn't realize I couldn't read. He was trying to teach me to print. And finally, he was trying to teach me to typeset. And so, in typeset, you have to put these letters together in your hand. He didn't do it how they do it with the computers. And then he realized and said, man, you got to come out of this. You have to go. And he took me to Eris Monk. We sat down, we had a discussion, but they had the discussion. And that's how it ended. And for me now, I don't keep friends who don't take care of their children. And it's for more personal reasons. And so all my friends know that. And even in my campaigning, I say to individuals, if you can't take care of your children, we will have a discussion. And after that, if you can't do it, then we don't need to be together. And I don't need your support. And so I think one of the most wonderful experiences I've had in terms of my childhood was my father not giving up on me, being and Daddy was larger than life. And I saw the reaction of people when they found out who I was, the way that they would treat me. And so I think that relationship now that I'm cherishing now that my father's gone, even though I didn't understand it then. And then I realized, because when I speak about crime, that some of my friends didn't stand a chance in this jungle if they didn't have a lion to protect them. And sometimes protect them in a way where when I did not want to, this old man turned up in his car or his truck and said, hey, get in the truck, let's go. So that's one of my most, and there are a number of experiences I've had on Kedai, my grandmother, my mother, and all that. My mother is much more profound, but my relationship with my father, I think, is the most powerful. And today, it still guides me. Today, I still think about the poems that he gave me that I didn't read then, that I pick up now. So that's it. Thank you.
Wow. That's a very moving testimony, sir. Not many of us men, grown men, young men, can say that they had a father that was consistent. And I like the quote or the statement you said. You said very few people would last in the jungle without the protection of a lion. That's good. I like that. But moving on, President Kendrick Dames, my good brother, talk to us. I think he is. I think you have to unmute your.
Yeah, yes. Sorry. Yeah, like I was saying, my life is quite interesting. I was raised in a single parent home. I spent the first half of my young life was on East Street. They were the days when we were kind of coming into the little street gangs and stuff like that, but it didn't develop as serious yet until like the 90s is when we really saw that outbreak in gang violence. And from East Street, we moved to Elizabeth Estates. But boy, my life has been, unlike the two presenters before me, I grew up in the gang. So my life was basically gang culture. So it was a lot of criminal activity, a lot of criminal friends. Of course, my father wasn't around. He was a criminal himself. I grew up, for the most part, going to visit my daddy in jail. So from a young boy, I was sort of getting very familiar with the prison system, how it works. They put the pass on the gate and, you go to see him and he come out and They bring them out from the back. And, even though he was in that kind of predicament, that was still my father. I was proud to be his son because, to some degree, I wanted to be just like him, So when some persons would kind of not be familiar with crime and criminality, that was almost like our way of life. So as a young boy, we didn't really see anything that was particularly wrong with that. It was just something that we did. This was who we are. We were gangsters. With all that being said, there was a particular gentleman in our neighborhood. As I get a bit older and start to review and look back at certain situations, there was a gentleman in our neighborhood, and his name was Theophilus Thompson. And he would stand on the block with us, and he would talk to us, and he would always encourage us to try not to get ourselves in trouble. And sometimes we used to sit there and we used to listen to him. And for me, that was one of the only kind of bright spots in the community. When I sit back and I think about it now, and except for when you go to church, I went to Bishop Arnold Josie's church, and you did a word, but outside of that, everything else was just we just grew up. It was that was just the way it was for me, And as I got older in the 90s was when the gang culture really, really was blazing. So I grew up to Strawn's Corner. As a matter of fact, that's where I was born. And if any of you guys would know, Strawn's Corner is the heart of where the rebellion gang came from. So all of my friends and a lot of my family from Strawn's Corner, we were rebellion. So it was sort of odd. When I look back at it now, guns and drugs, they were like normal things. That wasn't something we looked at as something criminal. We basically look at those things as a necessity. So that's kind of how my life was. And coming into Elizabeth Estates, it basically was the same thing. Because what you have now is you have a community built by the government, low cost income housing, where you have people would come from Baintown and come from Camp Road and come from East Street, and these were the people that came into one community. So it was just basically it's like a reshifting of certain inner city communities. Just everybody that's coming into one constituency. So, but I don't regret my childhood. We had fun. Everything wasn't just gang, but most of it in some parts, we had good times, man. We played basketball on the court, and we went canal swimming, little stuff like that. But it was pretty good. Growing up in the Bahamas for me, like I said, I kind of catch the really, really end of the 70s coming into the 80s. Like I say, the gang and the drug culture, all of that kind of stuff was, that was kind of really flaring up then. So yeah, that's basically the era that I came through.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, my brother James. You almost caused a tear to drop in my eyes just now. Almost caused a tear to drop in my eyes just now, sir. Because for most of you, or I guess particularly our partners, you don't know that gentleman you talked about, Theophilus Thompson, that was my father, the late Theophilus Thompson Sr. And I do have an appreciation for that kind of person you're talking about, because that same street philosopher, he was a street philosopher before Portgate. That same street philosopher that you just mentioned, I had that on a daily basis in my home. So I appreciate that. Appreciate that so much, Ken. You mentioned him because he's been there to me. And also on a side note, he is also his life was also cut short as a result of the same topic that we are addressing now this evening. So you can imagine the passion in which I have in my heart right now in that regard, because I know the scourge of that, you know, of what crime and killing, senseless killing, is done in this country and is continuing to do. But before I go on, I also want to ask you, gentlemen, briefly. I don't want to hop on this too long, but I think I'm trying to build something here, so bear with me. I also want you to tell me quickly, what is your most not so fondest experience? What is the experience that you had as a young boy that you would have rather not have had? That still lingers possibly to this day. That you still lingers today. Because as I disclaimed before you answer, the reason why I'm going in this direction is because for you to, what I truly believe, for you to truly know a man, you must understand and know his experiences first as a young boy. I'll say it again. For you to truly know a man, you must know his experiences as a little boy. Because there's something called arrested development that we go through as adults. I believe that causes trauma, that causes certain things to happen to us that we carry over at times into adulthood, because I think that's what really is affecting a part of the reason we are facing this country now with the senseless crime. People have been going through things, don't have outlets, and never had an opportunity to speak to someone. So please speak to the public briefly. We start with Pastor Dwight, and share with us briefly as we go on.
Mr. Thompson and Minister Johnson, Brother Dames, when you ask that question, I because you're causing me to reflect. And as I'm reflecting, at this stage of my life, and I'm trying to conjure up a thought as to, what would have been something that was unpleasant or would have brought a sense of dread to my life. And I'm answering this as truthfully as I possibly can. When I look back over my life, I can't come up with something that I look back and say to myself, I wish I didn't experience that. I grew up with an authoritative father, a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. We were Pentecostal people. I grew up, like a typical family. There was discipline. There was this sense of, order. And so, I look back over my life and, I can't tell you that everything was absolutely perfect, but I can't also tell you truthfully that I had childhood trauma. I've had experiences, like I said, I went to Kingsway, I went to Government High. I grew up in Dan Aldrich Estate, and and incidentally, you're talking about Strawn's Corner. My dad had a store, the big one shoe store, and so he too, like Minister Johnson, he was a very large figure. So any place I went, sometimes even to this day, I don't always announce the fact that I am his son, even though the reality is what he would have poured into me, I treasure. But I don't always like that public element to overshadow whatever I'm saying. But but I can't look back and honestly say to you that I had trauma. I had what I would think a wonderful childhood. We had challenges. We were in business. There were down moments. There were up moments. But I look back now at this stage of my life, and I think I enjoyed it. And that's an honest answer.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, listen, on preparing for this, I got the National Commission Report on Crime, 1998. One of the things that Commission on Crime called on us as Bahamians in terms of dealing with crime and everything that extends from crime is to be honest. And what it says, and the reports looked at the whole thing, the courts and all those different things, and it says and one of the things I want to quote before I go into what I have to say, we are convinced that the Bahamian society is more threatened by a pervasive culture of dishonesty, greed, and a casual disregard for social norms and formal regulations than it is for crime in the narrow sense previously described. He described a lot of stuff. And so, even in this meeting, you can call me else, but I think one of the things that, and I don't see things in my life as trauma anymore. I learned that all of us need our Pharaoh experiences, and those Pharaoh experiences drive us to our promised land. And so, in the good and the bad times, God has blessed us with them all. But I do recall accepting who I am as a person, and having conversations with my dad about that, that I'm not a mistake, no matter what people may say or think about me, that my position, because everybody used to laugh, big boy in school who can't read and all this stuff. And a number of different issues that I was facing, to sit with him in the quietude of the day and to have those conversations with him about who I am, who we are, who I am as a person, in terms of who we are as a people, where we've come from, the atrocities that we've faced, and how I should see that as my strengths. And I sometimes quote it today, at one stage, education, healthcare, all that wasn't for us, but we had strong people who fought for that. And so I think, why I say this is because you see so many young people in the community. Like I said, Daddy was very prominent. Daddy had, and I'm hoping that my political opponents don't use these things against me. He had his family and all that stuff. And so those were some adjustments I had to make. And so having those discussions with him, dealing with that, I think it's made me stronger as a man. Discovering my identity, and I see that a lot in persons. Looking at, the humble beginnings that I had, to see the strength and all of that, cornmeal griddle, going in the field, guinea corn, and all those different things, and not seeing shame in it because we didn't commit any criminal act. And so, what, and he would always say, what people mean for bad, it's going to turn out for good. So, those experiences. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Hello? I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No problem. It just went a little low.
To get my mic back up, and so it was things like that, and I'm putting it all in one thing, and there are some more, but that you find strength in your very experience and you move on, and so. I think that was it, but it made me a much better man in terms of concentrating on the responsibilities that I have to concentrate on for my children. I don't know what's happening.
Thompson, you're muted.
I can't hear. Okay.
Yes, so sorry. Yes, I appreciate your response, gentlemen. I do. I like your approach to it, as far as not really, I guess, say, because most people believe that we are the sum total of our experiences. But I think it's the other way around, or slightly different. I think we're the sum total of how we have dealt with our experiences. Our decisions sum us up ultimately, and you guys have decided to take lemons and make lemonade, wherever it may be, however it may be, and that's a good decision. But unfortunately, there are some people out there, gentlemen, that don't have that kind of perspective, that don't have that kind of fortitude and they have trauma, and they have a lot of stuff going on with them, and it's affecting their everyday life. And a part of that everyday life is it constitutes crime in many cases. So, it's important that we really understand the psyche behind this, because for crime to happen, you need a criminal, and you must have a criminal mindset. And I think, if I can, you said call you Ellsworth. So I mute. Sorry, say it again. He's trying to.
Thanks.
Your microphone. But I guess he's unable to respond right now. Okay. Well, I think Honorable Ellsworth Jonathan, he highlighted some statistics just now that is very striking. It's very, very striking, and it's a concern. It's a great concern, and it brings me to my basic point. I'm very basic, Pastor Dwight. I want to get down to the root of it. I want to get down to the foundation of it, and I want us to give a definition as we go into, because we have quite some time to get into some things. But I want us to give a definition of what is crime. What is crime? Because it seems as if crime for one person is something else, and crime for another person is something different. What is crime? I'm going to pose this question to you, Pastor Dwight. What do you perceive to be as crime?
Well, I think that there's going to be a major problem in our society if the concept of crime changes based on, either age or logistics or what have you. So I think, firstly, we all must come to an understanding what we consider to be crime. Crime is breaking the law. Crime is being anti-social. Crime is going against the things that that is considered to be right. And these may not be legal terms, but they are very fundamental terms. I grew up in a home where my dad was a disciplinarian, so I didn't commit crime because I had a reverence and I had a respect for who he was. I couldn't violate any of his laws, and to do that would have been criminal. And the consequence was, for me, too dire to even take the risk. And so I understood early what it was to plumb the line and not to violate. And so, and that now is transferred into how do I function in civil society? I function with the same mindset. Don't be a lawbreaker. Don't be anti. Don't be doing what is wrong, and learn to do what is right. My mom says this to my children all the time, even though they're adults now. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And so if we don't understand fundamentally as leaders and as social advocates what a definition of crime is, then that in itself is a problem. And so I think there has to be a general understanding of what crime is, because it can be several definitions if we're going to solve it. And so for me, in a real simplistic, in a simplistic term, that to me is crime.
Awesome. Mr. Dames, I pose a question to you. What is crime?
Well, like Pastor Ferguson said, crime is breaking the law. We have a penal code. There's a system, and once you were to violate any one of those, that within itself constitutes as a crime. But there is a strong psychological component behind crime and criminal activity, right? So someone said years ago that One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. So, with that being said, sometimes it depends on what side of the fence you're on, right? So, some people, crime is a necessity. For other people, crime is crime. So, for the young man who don't necessarily have it in terms of whether it's money or doesn't have the structure or a disciplinary in his home that is able to kind of keep him in line, that line is kind of blurred, right? So, like for me, growing up, criminal activity was normal. We saw nothing, even though we knew it was wrong in the sense that if the police catch you, you know you can get yourself in problem. You get locked up, you get go before the courts. But in our minds, these were just the things that we did. These things were normal. Inside of our circle, these things were normal. There was nothing abnormal about criminal activity, not for us. So again, it depends on which side of the fence you are. So it's crime in most cases it's basically it's a big psychological component behind it, because I could tell you when you've been kind of fostered in that kind of environment, sometimes when you see people who are abiding inside the realms of the law, of the law, they kind of look off to you. You try to figure out like what they doing. You understand? So sometimes it could get blurred. So that's just the way it is.
Wow, that's some good stuff. So, I like the fact what you said. You said, what was the quote again? You said, Mr. James.
One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
That's something to marinate on, because I'm going to show you guys something before the Honorable Ellsworth Johnson responds to this question quickly, and I'm quite sure Pastor Dwight would have an appreciation for this. Here we go. Okay, sorry. It says here. It says here that this is coming from Proverbs 6 and 30. It says, men do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. I say it again. Men don't despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. So a thief will not have an issue with another thief if he's doing something that he is familiar with doing. So if it's the norm for us as thieves to break bread and to make things happen of our own, regardless of us offending the law, my brother, by all means. So one man's freedom fighter would be another man's terrorist. So to the rest of us, a thief is like a mosquito underneath our shirt. But to the other thieves, he's just one of the guys. That's a serious thing. And they said the word of God is not current, Pastor Dwight. They lying.
It is very current, but it also comes with consequences as well. So
yes,
we've also got to be mindful that there is a consequence for the action. And so you're always on the risk factor when you always have to put in the balance the consequence. I may be thieving because I am in need. I may be stealing because I'm in need, but I may also be shot by the homeowner because I'm on his property. So
I'm on his property. Exactly.
We always got to be mindful that a violation comes with a consequence.
Yes, sir. Consequence. Minister Ellsworth Johnson, You feel free to tackle that if you wish. What is crime, sir? You being a public servant, give us your interpretation best, your best interpretation of what crime is. I think you're on mute. Let me see. Okay, got you.
Yeah, I agree with some of what I've heard before. I think, as we know, there are certain laws that are written to guide us in terms of what is right, what is wrong. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that I learned, and my father was always stress it. He says there's a certain immutable law of nature. That's what you sow, you're going to reap. You have to live for your children and for your family. And so so what you sow, you will reap, and to your own self be true. And so there may be certain things that you may not be able to find within the letter of the law, like respecting people, respecting what you say to them, how you conduct yourself in the community, certain things, the way how you respect yourself, the way how you dress. And I'm saying this for a reason, because even though in the classical sense there's certain things we see as a crime, I came to now I fully appreciate as a man, after spending time with other persons, that to neglect certain obligations is a big crime. I said when I first started that some of my friends couldn't make it, and some of them died. Some of them ended up in gangs. Some of them ended up in prison. Some of them ended up on drugs, and they lost their lives. Is because I think it was a crime not to have somebody there, or that to instill certain things in them to make sometimes the right decision, which may be hard at times, but if it serves you, it serves you well. It serves you well in life. And so, sometimes you look at the letter of it and say, well, you shouldn't steal, you should do certain things, but to abandon your children, to abuse women, to cause certain level of trauma, like with my wife. I don't argue around my wife. I just don't. I don't do it. I don't have discussions or heated discussions around my children. I don't want them ever to see that.
Wow.
And so certain things that we may not classify as quote unquote as crimes, they're really crimes against our community and our society and the people that we're trying to rear to really replace us, because all of us are only here for about a moment. And so all of us have an obligation, like Ken, and I could call him Ken. Ken used to cut my hair. I know him very well. I respect him as a senior man. As your father was to Ken, those, to teach them certain things about life that he saw probably they weren't getting. And so in the sense that we don't provide those things as insignificant as they may be, to my mind, I see that as a crime.
Wow.
So twofold. I'm a former police, I'm a lawyer, but I've been in courts long enough, because I did 13 years in legal aid, to see there are certain things that the magistrate, when she rests down her pen, she say, look, let me talk to you, son. Clear the court. I want to help you. That if she doesn't try or he doesn't try to communicate this life skill to this individual, as sure as day is night, this one is going to be dead. And normally, because what you sow, you're going to reap. And that's just how it is.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. That's good. I'm going to put here, before we move on, I'm going to put something up on the screen for you gentlemen to look at. The definition of crime according to Google. And it's defined as an action or omission which constitutes an offense and is punishable by law. I'll say it again. An action or omission which constitutes an offense and is punishable by law. So technically, crime itself has to measure up against some rule of some sort based on what this is saying here. You could correct me if I'm wrong. You being more skilled in the legal terminology of it, Minister. but it's supposed to measure up against some rule of thumb. And in some cases, like Pastor Dwight was saying, some of the things that his dad instituted in his house, if you broke that, that was a crime. It was a law, and it was an action or something that you did verbally, whether verbally or physically, that went against the spoken law in his house. Now, I want to touch on something with that, because we tend to look at heinous crimes. We look at murder. We look at robbery. We look at battery and grievous harm and different stuff like that. But there are some crimes, and I direct this to the Right Honorable. There are some crimes that is being committed by those that are in power with suits. And I say that delicately. And I have no, as a disclaimer, Minister, that I have no political persuasion, whether red, yellow, or green, purple, black, however. I'm just calling it straightforward. There are some crimes that is going on a daily basis by those that are wearing suits who have been given the authority and custodians of the well-being of the Bahamian citizenry. And I believe like a pyramid, I believe that it's putting pressure all the way down on the lower parts of the scale in our society, which is producing, give an example, producing the unemployment and the social issues and the lack of infrastructure and certain stuff like that, the opportunities and a variety of different stuff. It causes and puts pressure on the young man around the corner who doesn't have a wise voice to turn his ear to bend under that pressure to pursue crime. Now, granted, not every person is you don't make an excuse for people, but at the end of the day, if you follow the law or the theory of 6 degrees of separation, it shows how connected we are as human beings, and how leadership, how everything, as John C. Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So with that being said, I want to go into another definition, or try to tackle another definition on, and ask you gentlemen, because we talked about killing and crime, and we talked about now community. What is community? I want to start with the Right Honorable first, and then move our way up to Pastor Dwight. What is community to you? What is community?
All right. Thank you very much. You're right. It is about leadership. And once one takes leadership, it has an onerous responsibility for persons to conduct themselves with a level of respect and responsibility for the duty. Mm-hmm. I mean, for one of the most highest calls of service that you can ever give. But even in that, there's still a responsibility. And I want us, as we talk about this whole thing with crime, not to forget the home. When I bring it back, Pastor Dwight could probably expound on it much better, what Christ intended for the family. You know, Barack Obama said, we can do all that we want to do, but at the end of the day, I can't turn off the television for your child.
Wow.
I can't. There's some music that perhaps you can buy, or your child should never purchase. You should never purchase or allow your child to purchase. There's certain things that I cannot come into the privacy of your home to do for you and your children, like teaching them to read and all those different things, right? That has to be done. But the state is obligated to provide the infrastructure for education to ensure that once a child is able to do that, he's able to access it, food and all those things. But there's still some things that we're obligated to do. Community. To my mind, a community in its classical sense for creating citizens or persons who will participate in society properly is a village, where, and obviously sometimes we don't have that, where if you don't have the mother or the father, there is an extended family who assists in the proper rearing of the child or of the children or family, and where and in that community in my mind, you have persons who help. And that's why I say about the village, where if a young girl gets pregnant, there's an older lady who steps up, or older man who can give them some funds to assist without taking advantage of that individual. So community is a place where it provides the level of maturity in terms of persons, the church, individuals, uh, that would allow the individual, the child, our most precious resource, or those children, to be able to grow in a way so that, yeah, they will not be perfect, but they would be able to uh, assist in producing other children so that the society can go on and do its best to survive. Thanks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. My brother Ken Dames,
Yes, sir.
what's your interpretation of community, my brother?
Well, community, uh, I guess in its general sense and meaning, is a place where uh, you you live, work. A group of people that is live and work. But when I think about community, the thing that stands out to me is collective responsibility.
Mm.
And so, uh, Minister Johnson touched on it, and I think for the most part we have we have lost that throughout the years.
Mm.
I know growing up as a young boy in my community, you there are certain things that you just couldn't do or get away with, or you would be punished, if not by your parents, by great extent by an aunt or uncle or even a neighbor, or a cousin or whoever, anyone that was older than you or was considered to be, someone, your senior, they could have disciplined you. And, it just, and it extends beyond just the discipline, even in terms of just looking out for one another, people had genuine concern, back then, like every child in the community, belonged to a person. It was, so the neighbor's children were your children, so
Mm.
it's that kind of thinking for me when I think about community. That's the kind of thing that I see, and I think for the most part, a lot of the problems that we're having today, uh, it definitely it all boils down to the breakdown in our community, the breakdown of this collective responsibility that we should share with one another. And you know these things are so scientific, and there's so much benign things that comes with community and collective responsibility that it kind of goes unseen. But these are the things that it constitutes to this destruction and the decaying of this our moral fabric, you know that's supposed to be our society, that we see decaying so quick. The other day I was watching the news, and this guy was somewhere in Europe, some city in Europe, and someone had gotten killed, and this guy was being interviewed by a reporter, and he was like, it's like it's unthinkable for him in his mind to believe that someone can take someone else's life. Like, for him, like, that's unthinkable. He can't even begin to, like, wrap his mind around that. And I I looked in his face and I was like, this guy said that with so much conviction. And and I thought about our country, and it's like, like someone getting killed, like, sad to say, like that, like we've become so desensitized to killings, so. And I say all that to say all of this comes from the breakdown that we're having in our community, and it's sad, but community definitely is something that we need to work hard at trying to keep and to maintain, and even some instances to build back again, because in some instances it's just been completely destroyed.
That's good. Pastor Dwight?
The Honorable Ellsworth and Dames, I think they spoke to the reality of what is community. I'll tell you what it is, and I don't always like to speak in lofty terms. So let me just speak from as in a simplistic way. I think community is a gathering. I think it's also a grouping. I think it's connectivity. It's about the people coming together. I think a community is a composite of families, a composite of families, a composite of the ideas, spiritual mindset. I believe a community is also, that's not just a composite of the mindset of behaviors, but also a composite of just the whole, the essence of how people look at life. Now, I don't think we have communities like we had before. I think what we have are constituencies. I don't believe we have the village like we had before. I believe the village now is very much fragmented. Dane spoke about collective responsibility. I believe a lot of that has been infiltrated now with fragmentation, separation, alienation, and what we now have is families that live in a constituency, but we don't have the cohesive collectiveness of communities. And so, as a result of that, and I think Dane spoke to it, we now live in a society where you see the fragmentation, you see the moral decay, you see this element of, I think the Honorable Johnson spoke about, the responsibility that you have. That itself is criminal. You see that breakdown in men, in families, and now you have a body that's lying on the side of the road riddled with gunshots, and it doesn't move nobody. The cameras show up, news people show up, they do their report, they remove the yellow tape, and life goes on. That's not a community. That is a people that have now reached a place where they are so desensitized that they live in a constituency, and it's almost like every man for himself and God for us all. And so that, to me, in a nutshell, is a community, and that's where we're at. Yeah. And so when we speak to this monster of crime and killing, it can directly be related to the fact that our communities are broken. And so I think we could speak more to that at some point in time, but that, in a nutshell, is how I see community and what it's not.
Awesome. I just throw out a rhetorical question here. Could it be the reason why we have such a fractured community is because we have taken out the communion in it?
The gathering?
The gathering, yes. We've taken everybody is fragmented in their own directions. Everybody's their way, they, like I would say, everybody on their own run. No one is actually gathering, with the exception of I guess religious interests.
And can I don't know, I don't know, James, if we could just jump in like that, but give me.
Go ahead, sir.
Even that is fragmented now. So it is not about even denominations. Like I said, I grew up in a Pentecostal church. I grew up in what they refer to as the Big Jumper Church. But I grew up understanding that there was moral code. I understood that there was respect. I understood that there was a sense of honor that had to be given to the elders and to parents and to religious leaders. I understood that there was, violations. And I think the minister kind of, I understood, and I think he spoke to it, that, there may be a written law, but there was also family law. There was also law that we had to follow as relates to how we relate to each other. And all those that came with a violation came with a consequence as well. But I am challenged right now, and I believe that even in the religious circle, you don't see that sense of gathering where people come. So many people in our constituencies are unchurched. You don't see families coming and walking to a service on a Sunday, or going to Sunday school, or being a part of boys' brigades, or being a part of youth ministry. It is a small fraction of families, I think, now that are committed to the spiritual dynamics that bring them in a place where they can understand order and a sense of respect and awe of who God is, and then not only respect Him, but also in turn respect mankind. Because I find when you don't have respect for deity, respect for who God is, then you don't have a problem disrespecting anybody else. And so I think if I lend to the conversation, I would say that even in the gathering for church, it is not like what it used to be. Because if more families would find that opportunity to gather and to come, then I think we'll have less of a problem, and we'll begin to see more community. And so I believe the church right now is even in a challenge when it comes to community.
Wow. That is that's a very awesome take, Pastor Dwight, because I've heard of instances where church leaders have been openly fighting with each other, openly, um, issues inside, I guess, the morality of some of the leadership in church. And don't get me wrong, I'm a believer. I consider myself to be a son of God. I'm not trying to defame any pastor or any ministry, but I'm not going to play a deaf ear and a blind eye to the realities that we are facing when it comes to our church. And it's important because the church is, as Pastor Sands would know, Pastor Dwight would know, the church is the salt of the earth. So if Christ said, if there's no salt, everything can be fresh. Everything can be funky. You know what I mean? So it's a crazy thing. But if anybody else has any take on that, anybody wants to give something off the cusp, anybody wants to touch on that? Pastor,
if I may,
go ahead, sir.
I think one of the things that has affected it too is, I think the word I'm looking for is a sense of materialism. And our values have changed, I think, significantly. And even in life, and I always go back to my father. He would tell me something, and he used to say, you must always guard your character. He says, and he used to say to me, I remember one day I was associating with someone, and I tell you, he used to come and look for me. And he says, Elsewhere, let me tell you something about relationships. They're not dormant. Either this individual will influence you or you will influence them. And so I think our values have changed a bit. We've become so materialistic in terms of how do I get mine, or for mines and for mine, that I think we've neglected in a meaningful way the concept of neighbor, and how if you assist that young man, tomorrow he may not be the young fella jumping over the table at you, and so I think a lot of that has affected us where we are, and who we've become, and it's causing a lot of hardship. And I like how Pastor Dwight and my good friend brought it back, because we're talking about crime, criminality, and the deaths that we're having in the community, and a lot of it in terms of, and sometimes it's not because people have become desensitized. There was a shooting the other night, and I deliberately parked my car in the front of the house and had a conversation for about 2 hours with the persons, because I could see that they were frightened. Every time a car came through the corner, some people wanted to almost run. The young man took his pillow and his sheet, and he says he's going to live on the street. He can't sleep here tonight. And then we had the last shooting right down in front of Booker's house. I've never seen something like that in a long time since I saw it. I saw it when the police, but the road was clear. I saw grown men just huddling away. I don't think it wasn't that they didn't appreciate what was happening. I think in terms of protecting themselves, and I just want to introduce it, and their family, they think that the retribution would be real if they do something else. And to the point where, you know, you have conversations where some trust the police. And so I think if we become extremely materialistic and self-will, and that has done a lot to break down our sense of community. Not that we always had this whole beautiful heavenly concept of community, because remember, back in the 50s, 60s, and 40s, there were some places that Black people couldn't go, and some churches they couldn't go into. You know, and if you get that book on the history of the Jumper Church, you'll see how real it was. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's good, sir. Very good. We are now approaching our 8 o'clock hour. So before we go forward, I'd like to give a shout out or advertisement to our sponsors again. This is being hosted or being pioneered, collaborative effort between the Real Men Real Talk show. I am one of two hosts, myself and Coach San, along with the Elizabeth State Community Association. Our sponsors are the Game Changer Printing, Impact Fitness, and Kicks Hair Braiding. Kicks Hair Braiding. Gents, I want to throw something out there to you guys, to you gentlemen, because we talked about this community thing, right? And I want to throw a monkey wrench out there. I want to get a little biblical, and I guess I would kind of pose this question to Pastor Dwight, him being more senior, more elder statesman. God, throughout the scripture, I noticed that he always pushed the Israelites to make sure that they kept everything in house. He encouraged them not to go out there and to mix with foreign nations and to get involved with a lot of their interests and stuff, and so on and so forth. But they never listened. They always transgress against his instructions. And I guess what I'm asking tonight is, could the sense of community or the broken communities that we are facing now could be as a result of the foreign influence in our country? What does it mean to be Bahamian? What does it mean to make a box cart scooter? What does it mean to throw top? What does it mean to shoot marbles? What does it mean to know a Babuki and Barabi story? What does it mean to know all of the national symbols? The culture of the Bahamian culture, and again, I'm not trying to say that there's an issue with the Haitian culture or any other culture that may be in our nation, but I truly believe, as Ruth, any foreigner that comes in this country, their posture, our culture should be so strong and so compelling to them that they should say, my God will be your God and my people will be your people. I truly believe that, because I believe a part of the element that makes community so powerful is the common interest and the spiritual belief that it stands on. So Pastor Dwight, and anyone else that wants to chime onto that, what do you feel about that statement, sir? I'm going to bring that to you.
I'm not going to look at it from a spiritual context.
Go ahead, sir. However,
I know, sometimes when I'm moving, people always assume, well, I'm a pastor. So I'm going to look at it in a broad context, and I'll bring it back to a spiritual dynamic. Who is to blame, then, would be the question, if the culture and if the movement to patriotism is not looked at and adhered to, who is to blame? Is it the people that are in the nation or the people that are coming into the nation? I believe the people that are in the nation are to blame. And so we've got to go back and, honestly look at who we are as a people. And you speak about the foreign entity coming in, but I see it slightly different. I see it as a generation now who if you ask them some of the things that, what we consider to be Bahamian about boxcar, Booking Barabi stories, the average one of them won't know. And they didn't grow up, they didn't come from a foreign country. They're ours, And so we have not done a good enough job continuing to perpetuate the thing that made us who we are. And it could be too, and I think the Honorable Johnson spoke about it, could be too, because our value system would have changed. So in the 80s and 90s, there was a major shift in our value system. And so the things that were, true, and not that we've lived in utopia, mind you, there were always problems. But I think at the end of the day, we have lost our value system. And so as a result of that, we have this lack of appreciation for who we are, even as a people. And so the authentic element of what it represents to be Bahamian, I believe it's being lost. And it's because we have not entrenched in our value system who we are and have a sense of pride. I heard the Honorable speak about Guinea Corn and his experience in Cat Island. And he says, and he made this statement, he says, there's no shame, right? And so there's no shame in it because that was a natural way of life. And when he looks back at it, he saw it with a sense of value. And so, I'm sometimes appalled and sometimes I'm taken aback by the reality of parents that would have grown up and understood value, and now we would have raised children and children's children, and we've taken out that value system, So, my God will be your God, providing I know how to serve God.
Wow.
God as the center. I may not necessarily have him as center. So when I go into a foreign land or when I move, I don't move. I move to climatize rather than to have a sense of value and appreciation. And I believe in our Bahamian culture, we have lost a lot of that. And so we're so open and receptive to every other culture. We don't appreciate what we represent. And I believe that needs, we need to do a better job, whether it's in our schools, whether it's in our churches, to represent who we really are and to hold it with a sense of value. Because like I said, you can pick up the average 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old and ask them questions. Tell me about Booking Barabi. Tell me about the Garland. Give me some stories about, our culture as relates to our family islands. And tell me who's Joseph Spence, and I'm a Joseph Spence connoisseur. So, but at the end of the day, they can't answer that. And so I believe I think it's foolhardy of us to blame the people coming in when we, the people ourselves who are here, don't put the value on the thing that represents us. And I think I'll end there. And if I feel led to, I'll jump back in.
Amen. And to be very clear, I'm not saying that I'm blaming the foreign element.
No, I didn't take that as blame.
Okay.
I was just making that statement.
Okay. Good.
While you made the statement, I believe there are persons and there are a lot of people that blame them, like Haitian problem, this gang problem, this is Zopal. No. We are. And
yes.
Also too, this and this I bring this from a biblical standpoint. Again, one of the challenges we have in our nation is tolerance and acceptance. Yes. We want to be so judgmental and so harsh and coarse in one area of our lives, and then in other areas we want to be as loose and fancy and free. And I believe that's created this duplicitous mindset where what are we standing on? And so even spiritually, what are you standing on? I believe if you're going to be an Adventist, be a good Adventist. Don't eat no conch. You're an Adventist. And I believe if you're going to be, if you're Pentecostal, be true to who you are, represent who you are, and be true to your God. And I believe we've lost that value where we like the name, we like the title, but we don't have the affiliation because we don't have the value. All right, that's my 5 cents.
Wow, that's good. That's $5, Pastor Dwight. 95 cents. That's $5. I love that. Honorable Brother James, feel free, chime in.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Reverend Rev. The question was about foreign influence in the Bahamas.
Well, let me kind of see if I can kind of put it in a nutshell. The statement was our culture. Is our culture being affected by foreign? Are we allowing foreign influences to affect our culture? Because what I truly believe that culture helps to make up the fabric of the community. The Bahamian culture. What is at the core of the Bahamian culture? At the Bahamian man. Quickly, my pastor has an initiative he does every year. He calls it unmasking the true Bahamian. What is at the core of the true Bahamian? Is the core of the true Bahamian spiritual, or is he just in love with going to church on Sunday? As a result, is the foreign influences affecting that, or is it the other way around?
I think there's a way we allow everything into the country. We're a country of laws. At the end of the day, we must, as the good Reverend said, we've lost some of our value. There's a reason why, some persons do as they do. I speak about Cat Island so much, or that I still get up in the morning before I go to work and I go in my yard or I go up to the farm. Because those things made me who I am. And if you don't celebrate and appreciate who you are as a person or as an individual or as a Christian, and Pastor Dwight Ferguson was identifying the different denominations, then somebody else will do it for you. And so there must be certain things that you hold dear to your heart. As you know, every time in the morning you get up, you hear the national anthem, the pledge, and you hear the preamble to the Constitution, or who we are as a Bahamian. And we have to teach those things. And that's the best example of it is I was at Cat Island, and we were at a celebration, and they were playing Rake and Scrape, and they changed it to reggae. And my uncle shouted in a loud voice, "Cut it!" And so some of the younger persons who was from Nassau said, "What are you trying to talk about?" And so the other guys who believe in that family structure, here's this old man who you may not rate, but in our eyes, he's a leader in the family now. If he say cut the music and change it back, that music, I can tell you on Cat Island would be cut, and you putting back the Rake and Scrape. Because we understood how significant it is, because it tells a story. It reminds us of who we are, our forefathers, our grandmother, and certain experience. When you're going down Burma Road and you hear about how to make a pot of soup, all of those things are who we are. The dry conch and all those different things is a part of our experience or where we've come from. The old man, and when I see the old man go get the conch, dry it out, put it there, and you preserve it because you had no refrigerator. And you told those stories. That has to be important to you, important enough that you teach it, and that goes not only for what we call in our social environment, but that's also for your Christian experience. So there are certain things that if we don't cherish it. Yeah, well, that would be that influence. For instance, right now, you have a lot of Bahamian young persons who would much rather put on music that we don't understand sometimes and listen to Drake and all these other persons. We gave them the television.
Mm.
We provide them at the home, and we allow the young child to control us in the home. So there
Mm.
are a number of things that we have changed in terms of how we conduct ourselves that has allowed certain things to happen today. Uh,
Mm.
and so for instance, my daughter said, "Boy, mom, we got two air conditioning." I said, "You're right." I said, "Mommy is now in her 70s," and I reminded my daughter of how hard my mother had to work. She worked in a hotel. We grew the okra, and we had to cut it up, and she cook some and take it to work and sell it to the young men. And sometimes when I see those men who are now a little older than I, stop and say, "Hey, what's happening?" They ask me, say, "Hey, where I know you from?" I say, "My mother used to work in the boathouse. Used to buy the soup. So it sometimes help my mother to come home and buy the rice and the stuff to feed us." That's a very important part of our story, but it must mean something to us. When the
Mm.
Jamaica say, "Boy, you on the ackee and saltfish and roast bread fruit," you see how they say it? It's not
Mm.
that they are being influenced by the very same culture. You have to be able to say, "Man," and I deliberately say when I go somewhere, "Y'all have any sappadilly?" And they say, "Sappadilly? Well, but I mean to do it."
Mm.
And sometimes the people would laugh. But because you have to preserve your culture, and we can't blame the foreigner for that. We have to blame ourselves. And so if we want boxcar, if we want certain other activities to come back, we have to show our children that is near and dear to us. And it's very interesting when children see adults because they mimic us. And the negative attitudes that we may say they have, they got it from somewhere else where they're mimicking somebody else. But if they see you do it and they see it's important to you and they see it's spoken about in church and all these different things, they will love it and they would want to sing it because it has that approval. So at the end of the day, the responsibility is ours. We can't blame the foreigner. The foreigner ain't no stronger than us.
Mm.
No stronger than us. And when we look at its lowest common denominator, all of us are made in the image and likeness in God. And He gave all of us the power of choice. And He gave all of us the great commission to go out, conquer, and subdue. And no man is more stronger, more intelligent than any man. And I try to teach Black people that over and over again, but that's not true. Thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brother James?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. For me, every time I think about the Bahamas, right? The first thing I say is, what have we really identified what is Bahamianization? I mean,
Mm.
I get it. I get the box card. I get the hopscotch. You know, bat and ball. Things we would do growing up that we identify with. And a lot of times when I'm watching television shows and they are in far eastern countries, and sometimes I just look with observation and I see the way these people interact with themselves, right? And it's almost like their their culture hasn't moved the same way they were interacting, in my view, 200 years ago. They are still interacting now. And when you start to, for me personally, when I start to analyze, right, I start to think about it in a sense as it relates to the Bahamas. We gained our independence in 73. I always ask people that lived in the Bahamas in 1972, right? What were they considered? And we all knew that they were considered to be British subjects. So when you look at that from that component, you have to look at the fact that we were a colony and we were colonized. So is it so that the element of our colonizers to some degree still exist within our community or
Mm.
even within our psyche? So
Mm.
you think about it, 48 years we've been in existence compared to America, which is like 200, I think 296, somewhere thereabouts. You look at a China with a much older civilization, right? So these are countries and people that have been around for quite a long time. And I got to agree with Minister Johnson, right? When he said that the things that we want our children to know, we have to teach them, right? So I think we have to be deliberate and intentional about the things that we would want to pass on as Bahamians. And again, like I say, I think we have to, first and foremost, we have to identify with what is Bahamianization. That's first and foremost. And we have to be able to pass it down to the kids. We have to be intentional. And Ellsworth mentioned Jamaica. And I'm always very fascinated with Jamaicans, right? Now, they basically in the same situation as us. They were colonized by the same people, right? By the Brits. But for some reason, Jamaica, their culture, they seem to do it really, really well. And like it still is fascinating me to the day, right? So you watch a Bahamian, we go to America, and after about 3 to 4 years, hey yo man, what's up?
2 years, 2 years, my friend.
I finna go to the store, and so we then pick up that slang. A Jamaican will be in America for I'm talking about for umpteen years, and when you hear them, yo, wagwan man, they will not change that accent. When you go there, they still cooking the ackee, the saltfish. They still doing the callaloo. I talking about Jamaicans. That's one thing I must say that I respect about them. Their culture is very, very strong. And I think it's very strong because unlike us, I think they have identified with what their culture is. I think even the colonialism that they would have experienced, I think they were able to separate that from who they are as a people, and they were able to package that and they sell that to the world. So it is so strong. Tell wherever black people go anywhere in America,
they think
and you talk, they think you're a Jamaican.
That's right.
All they gotta do is see the color of your skin and you talk a little different.
Yeah.
What you is Jamaica. So Jamaica represents the whole Caribbean in the world. You understand? So for me, like I say, and Minister Johnson, you hit it right on the nail right on the head. It has to be intentional and it has to be deliberate. When you have your birthday party, you play some rake and scrape. You understand? They're saying these are the things you pass on to the children. So it has to be something that we are focused on. Like I say, it has to be something first and foremost that we have to identify with. We have to package it, and we have to be able to pass it down. And one of the things too that I always kind of think about too is how much influence is technology having in terms of us evolving as a people. Like how much is evolution having to do with it in terms of Pastor Dwight talk about it, about people not even coming to church no more. And I growing up in the Bahamas as a young boy, I could remember on Sunday, you dare to see anybody on a basketball court on a Sunday. Only after 1 o'clock, you'll start to see the boys drifting on the basketball court because there was a reverence about Sunday. Sunday was like a holy day in the Bahamas. So, like I say, I don't know how much like we've changed. The world is changing. I mean, obviously, we are moving with that. I don't know how much of that element has to do with the way we think, the way we act, how we interact with one another. But like I say, I guess there's a whole lot of elements behind it. But again, we have to be intentional and we have to be deliberate about passing on Bahamianization. We have to identify exactly what is Bahamianization. and teach it to our kids?
And sorry, not to cut you off, because we are coming close to our 9 o'clock hour. So there's a short video I want you gentlemen to see, and I want our viewers to see, and I want you to chime in on it quickly, because I want to get into the solutions to the problem. We spoke about the things at a fundamental level, at a foundational level. I want to get into the solutions to the problem, because I believe that real change starts with real talk. That's my belief. So bear with me as I play this video. But as I play this video, what I'm getting from all of you, a sense of you, is a strong sense of culture, knowing what is Bahamian, identifying our true Bahamian heritage and what we are as a nation, as a people, summing it up or surmising it just as an identity. And I think our country is going through an identity crisis. Because I do appreciate the Jamaican example you gave, because I've been called Jamaican everywhere I went in the US. But I'll play this video for you gentlemen in short order, so bear with me. And for those that are viewing,
and he plans to deal with it head on. First emerged several years ago in the much larger reserve of Pilanesberg, with a series of mysterious deaths. Pilanesberg is famous for its herds of white rhino.
And what was the problem?
Park manager Johnson Mayoka was disturbed to hear reports of more and more rhinos being found dead.
Well, initially we actually got alarmed and thought we could be losing rhinos through poaching. But after we realized that their horns were still intact, we realized that no, there is no poaching.
Pilanesberg staff, led by park ecologist Gus Van Dyke, had to turn from being game wardens to homicide detectives.
A lot of the rhinos that were killed had obviously been injured for a long time and had taken a few days to die.
Van Dyke had a hunch that elephants might be implicated, but elephants are not normally known to attack other creatures.
And it's very easy quickly to see that there's no bullet holes, but when you started heading to this type of thing, then you started seeing the elephant influence. So you can see, look at that massive lesion on this animal's neck here. Elephants were suspected, but frustratingly we didn't have any concrete proof. Elephants were often seen to be associating with rhinos, but we hadn't seen any direct conflict.
The evidence mounted that elephants could be responsible. There was eyewitness testimony to elephant-on-rhino violence, if not actual killing.
We actually came across an incident where the elephant was actually pushing a rhino around and physically causing damage to the rhino.
Van Dyke placed a careful watch on the elephant herds. Every large elephant became a possible suspect.
We started then recording each individual's behavior on a rap sheet of sorts. On the 26th of April, elephant bull number 1 chasing white rhino, Mutlobo Drive, ID photos taken. 29th of April, 3 days later, white rhino mortality, Monkwe Dam. 2nd of the 6th, aggressive interaction with tourist vehicle. The 8th of the 6th, aggressive encounter with tourist vehicle.
Adolescent bulls became the prime suspects. The investigators knew there might be a reason for unusual behavior among them. because many of these youngsters had suffered a kind of deprived upbringing. The herds they grew up in were not typical families. They were put together artificially. It all began in the 1980s in Kruger Park, South Africa's biggest reserve. Kruger was overcrowded with elephants and began culling them. The older, bigger animals were killed. The younger ones were spared, then dispersed to other parks. Many were transplanted to Pilanesberg, and it was these animals who now seem to have grown into troublemakers. Severely unsettled in childhood, the young males had turned angry and destructive in their teens.
Youngsters which were brought in here had to fend for themselves without any leadership, and as they grew up, they became sort of delinquent.
The juvenile delinquency had another cause: elephant biochemistry. Each troubled teenager exhibited signs of premature sexual development. They had entered a hormonal condition known in elephants as must. Each bull was pumped with testosterone, stressed out with sexual anxiety, and looking for a fight.
He starts picking himself up high on his front legs, chest out, shoulders up, head up, and he walks with a very confident gait. He starts dribbling urine, and so his back legs are continuously saturated. Then the temporal glands are also swollen and dribbling. See there, he's got temporal streaming. Okay, here you can see the classic must. You can see the wet back legs. See his high walk. They become really stroppy or unpredictably aggressive. It was Darwin, I think, who said there's no animal more dangerous on earth than an elephant bull in must.
The troubled teenagers were entering must far too early. There seemed to be only one likely explanation: the absence of older males to curb their youthful exuberance. The young bulls needed role models.
The bulls rely on a slow introduction to must. When he's in his middle 20s, he might just pop into must for a day or two and then be beaten by a bigger bull who's been in must for a while. Obviously, the Pilanesberg bulls at the time didn't have that. They were coming into must early and they were just having these unbelievably long, extended must periods. And those were to rhino mortalities.
The case of the dead rhinos was closed. The worst of the culprits were condemned to death to protect the rhinos and everyone else. But removing the killer elephants didn't tackle the root of the problem.
We were reluctant, quite obviously, to just keep on culling problem elephants. The best option, we felt, was to try and normalize the societies.
The story moved back to Kruger, where it had begun. A new search was mounted there to find males of the right age group to ship to Pilanesberg as role models. But capturing large adult bull elephants is no easy matter. It required large doses of strong tranquilizers and some heavy lifting.
There's a real art in keeping the animal awake enough to prevent him collapsing within the truck and sedated enough to prevent him getting upset and throwing his weight around inside that container.
Coming up, will bringing in the adult bulls stop the delinquents' bad behavior? Science Times returns after the break. After an arduous journey, the big bull elephants arrive.
So, gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'm not going to allow the entire video to play out, but the gist of it is these elephants were taken away from their natural homes and then placed in this park because they started to overrun and be overcrowded in a particular area. Long story short, they were taken away and they started to develop and grow up. And they started to develop and grow up with no sense of family and, more importantly, no sense of male structure. So as a result, they started to kill all the animals inside of the park, the wildlife park. So what they did is someone came with a genius idea. So we're going to get some older elephants who are already at the height of their lives and filled with testosterone themselves, and they're going to spank them up and put them in place. And sure enough, when they put them inside there, those teens that were carrying on a certain way, it even started to bring down their biology and all. It started to bring them down. And I said to myself, I said, wow, after listening to this and watching that, I said, wow, nature is showing us how it ought to be done. Nature is showing us how it ought to be done. So my question to you, gents, and I say to you all as we start the end of this, the question here is, what role do we play as men and women overall? What role do we play in this solution? What role do we play? And how can we fulfill this role? You back with us? For the names? Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Who do you want to go first?
Well, I guess, well, yeah, you can go first. We can be as quick as possible because we're closing soon.
Okay. Very interesting. I'll go back and watch that element about the elephants again. I won't focus on the dynamics of, and I think every time I listen to the Honorable Johnson, there's a real good dynamic. I keep hearing him mention his father. And I also hear him mention his mother. She played a vital role, but his father served as this guide. My father served as a guide. I am not a criminal because my daddy kept in mind. I never went before the courts, all because before there was a respect for policemen, there was a respect for my father. And there was a respect for my father all through my life. And so even up to my adulthood and having children, when I sat with my dad, there was this sense of respect and honor for what he represented. And so as a grown man with wife and children, I still sat in his presence and I gave him respect. And I sat there with this sense of honor to be in his presence. We have missed that, and I think one of the challenges we have is our men are not stepping up to the plate. So I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem for another discussion. What can we do, and how do we influence? Too many of our men are not taking responsibility for the children they're producing. And so, I came up in a solid two family, two husband, wife, a father, mother home. There were 8 of us, but we understood. And my dad said that I did the best I could with what I had. But what he was saying is, with whatever I had, I'm giving you the best I could. And what he gave us was a sense of respect for eldership. I think that's where we're missing the mark. I wear my beard now with a sense of honor. Years back, it would have been a challenge to wear a white beard. I wear this with honor now. I'm an elder. Respect the beard. You come into my presence. You're 13, 14. You say, sir. You can't call me by my first name. And so I think that is one of the challenges, and the role we need to be playing is our men need to be men. Step up. You have a responsibility. And tonight, as I'm listening to the Honorable Johnson, I am taking that away as well, because he said his dad had some 20-something children. And he gave the reality of what the family structure was like. But here was this man, and while the child was born out of wedlock, he still took the responsibility to help give him guidance. And so I am where I am today because I think, as a result of what my father represented, I now can hold my head up high. And now I have this responsibility to pour this now into the two children I have, in addition to the community, in addition to the church, in addition to society. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Where are the men? Honorable?
Yeah. I make no apology for this. You know, I know that there is a God. I know there's a role he plays as a male figure. There's no, to my mind, there's no competition between man and woman. He made them to complement each other. To my mind, a woman can't do what a man could do, and a man can't do what a woman could do. And you need that male figure, as you showed with the elephants. When young men start to come into puberty and all those different things, they need not someone to forcefully drive them to where they need someone that they respect, who's a man. And the other thing, and I'm going to cut it short, my father had certain experiences, and he didn't want to give that to his children. And as Rev said, it was amazing to say, wow, Daddy actually signed my birth certificate. But Daddy also told me something. He says, listen, I have made enough. I've had enough indiscretions for me and you in your lifetime. You don't have to do what I did. So this is what you should do. I've done it. I have the experience. Let me tell you something. But we then have one. I see my children as a blessing from God, and I always ask my daughter. I says, my daughter, especially the young one, why do I love you so much? She says, because I'm a blessing from God. But we have another opportunity that he taught me about all of these children that we meet in the community, and I'm happy that Rev said it. We have an obligation to be a father to the fatherless, and that brings blessings to us. To have those meaningful conversations. We may not be able to go home with them, to smile with them, to give them approval, to live our life in a way that they would respect us, but also for our contemporaries, to let them know, to be bold enough to say to them publicly and nationally, listen, to the extent that we aren't doing this, we need to have some serious conversation. And if you're not prepared to do this, and that's why I spoke about crime, not in the conventional sense. If you send a small animal into the jungle, a leopard, a lion, or they'll die of starvation, something will get it. You need that father figure for young girls. And I know Ken and I used to have these conversations, especially for young girls, and especially for young boys. But to the extent that they may not be our biological children, I think God has also placed a responsibility on us to look after them as best they can. And just by being a godfather, I tell men, you carry some corned beef or some rice for your child. Sometimes all they want is that communication. But we have an obligation to be that in the community. Thank you. So father figures are incredibly important. And you see, and especially that father figure, when you see that mother is struggling and she may not have someone to come, you don't go there to try and abuse her. Sometimes, a mother have 3, 4, 5 children. You take some rice and flour and carry to the house and let your wife, or tell your wife go carry it. Take it for them. And,
yes,
and God will be working a miracle through you. Thank you.
That's wisdom, sir. Tell your wife carry it. That's wisdom.
That's right.
Yes, sir. That's wisdom. But James, talk to us, man.
Yeah, as fathers, man, we have to play the role that was intended and designed for us. We just have to be fathers, and the video that we just watched, that says it all. Like Minister Johnson said, he and I had a lot of conversations. And, every time I think about Minister Johnson, right, in my mind, like talking to him throughout the years, like he was always like a hardliner to me. Like he was always very brutally honest. And he always referenced his father, Mr. Oscar Johnson. Every time we would always reference to him. And You know, I remembered when he was going into politics, and I said to myself, I said, boy, you know, this fella too honest for politics, but you know, because he's always strike me like that. But you know, Minister John says one thing that I must agree with you with is, brother, anytime you see fellas don't take care of their children, I want nothing to do with your son. I don't even keep friends with brothers who have kids and they don't take care of them. To me, that's like a big reproach to me. Like I hold that extremely high. Like they have this street colloquial term, like they use this word rate. Brother, I don't rate you. When you have your children, big man, and I can talk like this, anyone who listening, take care of your children.
Wow.
Like the old people that say, you're children, not children. You take care of your children. You live with that woman, you produce your children, you have a God-given responsibility to take care of these children. That's why our society, and by greater extent, our country is in problems, because we as men have fallen down. God has designed men to be the head of their families. We are the head. We are the ones that we set the map, we set the agenda, we set the sail. It all starts and it all begins. It all starts and it all stops with us men. We have to get back. I have 2 kids and God has blessed me with them. And like I tell people, my life is my children. I have 2 girls. My life is them. I work for them. Everything that and the thing about it is, I didn't have a father. And I saw the ramifications that had in my life. And I'm lucky to be here. Because based on statistics, I should have been dead or I should have been in jail. Trust me. I was heading down a danger. My father was absent in my life. So because of the impact that had on me, even so much the more, that caused me, I always said, if I were to ever be blessed with children, I would take care of my kids. Men, take care of your children, man. God bless you with them. Take care of your children. Be there for them, and not just in a monetary way, but you have to be there. You have to give them guidance. You have to give them instructions. You know, let's buckle our strap boots, man. Let's pull up our pants and gird our loins, man. Let's take care of our children. Stop being lousy, brothers. Let's take care of our children. It's our God-given responsibility. We must. And there's not going to be no change in this country until men step up and do what they're supposed to do.
Amen. Amen and amen. Brother, I so appreciate that. I so appreciate that, gentlemen. I so appreciate all of you joining us this evening and giving your take. I do feel that this is worthy of a part 2, because we have to dive into the solution. I keep calling Pastor San. Lord, bless Pastor San. But Pastor Dwight, you laughing? Listen, we need a part 2 of this, because the solution to this is, I believe, is the half is yet to be told and to be done. I truly believe, and I have this quote in my mind, that true leadership is results. True leadership is results without compromise. True leadership is results without compromise. And God has called us as men to be leaders in every facet of society. I'm going to put up a scripture before we close that I'm quite sure that everyone has been familiar with, particularly so Pastor Dwight. And it reads, Malachi 4:6, and I shall turn the heart of the fathers to their children, and the heart of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Now I direct my statements towards the honorable. Our issues is not financial issues, it's not economic issues, it's not issues of tourism and natural resources. It's not gambling, it's not all of those things, all of the fluff. Our issues is the lack of the spirit of fatherhood in this country. In the scripture, if you subscribe to the word of God, it says, I will smite the earth of the curse if the fathers have not turned their hearts towards the way their children. I love this. I'm going to go a little deeper with this. And it says here, fathers to their children and the heart of, said fathers to the children, sorry, to the children, and the heart of their the children's hearts will turn towards their fathers, which means that we, the onus upon us, those who are fathers, are to go towards those who don't have fathers and cause them to have something happen to them so strong that they go to their fathers and mend the relationship with their fathers. Because dad is destiny. I'll say it again. Dad is destiny. You want to know where you're going or where you come from? Look at your dad. You cannot be a mother without, you cannot call mother without first calling father. Listen, nothing against the single mothers. I had a single mother myself, powerful woman, awesome stuff. But if you're looking for change in this country, it's first going to start with God's ideal plan, which is to have fathers, men, come up to their rightful place. So, gents, if any of you wish to have any closing words before we go, before we close, please feel free.
I want to. I wanted to just quickly. I'll quickly say this, Dames, and then I'll finish. Thanks for being a part of the panel and being a part of the discussion tonight. I want to leave this though, and that's food for thought. With so many of our children now fatherless because of crime and because of killing, then we have a responsibility to be fathers to the fatherless. And so I think that is another dimension that needs to be talked about, because some people can't find their dad. Daddy don't exist no more, you know. But there are persons who, you know, that can step in. We need more mentors. We need more persons that will, you know, create an environment for love and affirmation and healthy expression of godly principles. And so I believe that discussions could be furthered, but I think at the end of the day that we need to be fathers, and fathers not just to our biological children, but also to our community, and by extension, I say our church and our society. I think that's my final word.
Well, I want to thank you very much. I concur with what Pastor Dwight said. I want to thank all the panelists, even in his absence, Bishop Josie. But thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, for the wonderful work you're doing, and I pray that God will continue to bless you. And yes, we do need fathers. And when you know, one of the greatest communications ever is the prayer, Our Father, going to our God, asking for direction on how we have to treat our neighbors. And that's one of the most prolific communications ever.
Yes, sir.
It basically outlines the 10 commandments and everything you should do. So thank you very much. I learned so much tonight. May God continue to bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you, sir, wholeheartedly. For the dames, any closing words?
Yes, I just want to thank. This was a very, very, very good panel discussion tonight. Just want to thank the Honorable Minister Ellsworth Johnson. I want to thank also Pastor Dwight. He's been very active with the Elizabeth State Community Association. He's been there. He's always in the community. I just want to I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Thank you too, gentlemen, for being a part of it.
Yes, sir. Good. Awesome stuff. Well, we are okay. Sorry, we are at the end of our broadcast this evening. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining this conversation. I would hope that we can have another opportunity to have something like this again. I think this is necessary. I think what starts change and what brings things into action is conversation. Our God is a God of conversation, and before He does something, He first communes. So I encourage this, but I encourage this also with action. And I'll say this before I go quickly. I remember I had an opportunity to chime in to what you said, Honorable Johnson, Ellsworth Johnson. I had an opportunity, and I'm always dealing with young men. And one time I was speaking to some of them, and I felt like I was falling on deaf ears. And you can know when you just, and then Pastor Dwight would have an appreciation for this. You know, when you feel you talking to a group of people and they look like they're not even in tune with what you're saying. You just like it's it can be frustrating. And I spoke and I talk and I'm sweating and I'm working. And at the end of it, the Lord told me, I said, just go up to them at the end of it and say these two things. I'm proud of you for making it so far, and I love you. Listen, who wasn't tearing up was giving me all the waterworks in the world. I am proud of you, and I love you. And I said, Lord, and I walked away. I said, Lord, what was that? Like that was more energetic and more exciting for me than the whole mess. I said, Lord, I felt like I broke through with just a few words. He said, because that's where it starts. Ian. That's where it starts. I'm proud of you, and love you. So maybe now, right honorable, how about this? You can probably beat me to this punch. I'm going to give you a little nugget here. You try this for your campaigning. Maybe you should go around the communities and say, listen, before I say one thing about the party, I want to first say I'm proud of you for surviving through this COVID, this pandemic, and I love you. Let's talk.
All right. Thank you very much.
Let's try that.
Okay. All right.
Again, gentlemen, I do appreciate you all. This has been a collaborative effort with the Real Men Real Talk Show and the Elizabeth State Community Association. I'm so glad. Special shout out to my brother Apple, aka Apple. Sheldon
Apples.
Apple, he's the one that is responsible along with my buddy Ken here. I know, don't mind me playing crazy. I know Ken long time, man. Ken is a big brother. He's a brother. I want to thank them too, and along with the Elizabeth State Association for allowing me to give me the wonderful opportunity and the privilege, because I came up with Elizabeth State. I'm a son of the soil of Elizabeth State myself, coming up with Elizabeth State, or Lizzie, allowing me this opportunity to do this, and hopefully we can have more opportunities like this again in the near future. So thank you so much, gentlemen. You do enjoy. Tell your wives thank you for the time they've allowed us to share with us tonight during this time. Tell your children, give them the best, kiss them, hug them, pray with them. All the best to you all, and all the best to our viewers out there. This is the close of our show, and this is where real men have real talk to start real change. God bless.
God bless it.